So we started in 2020. We started from very small. It was, my partner Tom and I were on site. We had one other guy helping us, and we were doing a lot of, small kitchens and bathroom kind of remodel projects, and have just steadily grown since then. But, we haven't really felt like a real business until maybe the last year or two, and which was, a big reason for starting with Nover about a year and a half ago. And in those last couple of years, we've really grown our average project size. So still doing, residential remodels, added additions last year, and done a lot more of those this year. And then we got our first custom home that's just started recently. And so, our average project size in the middle of last year was somewhere between 30 and 60,000, and I think it's more like 250 to 350,000 now. So it's been a really incredible jump for us, and we have goals of continuing to increase that number. I think we'd like that to be in the 500,000 to a million range next year, by the end of next year. And I think that it feels very attainable based on what our current pipeline is looking like, and the lead flow that we're getting.
That's awesome to hear. And when I speak to a lot of prospects, that's always their goals. They're like, how can I get bigger jobs? And I'm like, well,
Yeah,
you kind of have to walk there. You don't just like
right.
show up, build your business and like get your first like custom home job.
It's so hard to be patient. So when you're thinking about it quickly and looking in the future, it's like, why can't we get there? But then when you think about how much has changed in the past year, it's really incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you talk to me a little bit about before you were working with us? How were you handling your marketing?
Yeah, so we weren't doing a lot of Google Ads and things like that. We had a website through Squarespace that I was managing personally, and we had a social media marketing agency for about a year that was doing all of our social media stuff. But the two were separate and disconnected. We weren't doing any blogs or any real SEO work, and so it was obvious that we needed a different solution.
I was actually making this reel the other day talking about like how to start a construction business. And like one thing I was talking about was like door knocking and doing the things that like most marketing agencies would be like, no, let's start you with ads. Like, talk to me about how you got your first job.
I think when we first started, we were under the impression that my brother-in-law, who's an architect, was going to give us some referrals and more work, but he was doing larger projects, and he also, as soon as we started, went back to his architectural firm, so didn't really have anything to give us, and so we had to figure it out on our own. So we were using Home Advisor and just people we knew from family relationships to start with the small projects, and quickly was word of mouth kind of things. And we were able to grow as a percentage pretty quickly at the start. We were very small. But one thing that we're doing now is talking to architects a lot. So that's something that we do as part of our business development. It's not included in like our general marketing, and there's no cost associated with it. And we just are essentially cold calling architects. Maybe someone recommended them, or we got a set of plans from a client, from a lead. For that we saw their name and contact info on these plans, and so we just like reach out, and we don't have like really high success rates with this. Maybe like 50 to 75% of the people we're reaching out to we actually set up a meeting with, and then maybe 1 in 3 is actually sending us plans, preliminary plans or bid sets of plans after that. But like that, anyone that we actually get that relationship with is like it's a clear example of like a one to many, right? Like we might have a relationship with these architects for 30 years, and we've already gotten between 4 and 6 leads from at least 2 or 3 of these architects that we've reached out to. And that's kind of goes back to that going door to door concept. It's like it's a huge push for us right now, in conjunction with all the other traditional marketing that we're doing.
Definitely. And I know you say you're like, oh, it's not a high success rate, but like for a cold email or cold call, that's awesome that you can even get them to speak to you and that you're actually getting follow-ups from them. And like when you're, especially when you're talking about growing into bigger projects, like I have a custom home builder here, he only does custom homes. He has a minimum project size. He's like, oh, I'm not doing that one job. And it's all through architect referrals. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's a hard, long game, but the value
Right.
of it is so huge.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I have to call them a few times, but annoy them a little bit. But yeah, it's been really good.
Definitely. You said something interesting in your questionnaire that I think a lot of construction companies, when they get to a certain stage, struggle with. You said you needed to systemize everything all the way from leads to certificates of occupancy. So, can you talk a little bit about like your pain points and when you realized that needed to happen?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, this is something that Tom and I are kind of obsessed with right now, and kind of doing this in every facet of our business. I think the main catalyst for us was at some point last year. I think it was after we had started with you, so we might have gotten the wrong order there a little bit, but was we realized that we couldn't get people to make their selections early enough, and we didn't know enough to know that we could set expectations and kind of require that people finalize all their selections and really finish the design and planning phase before construction starts. And that's not something that a lot of builders are doing, but the good ones are certainly doing that, and that's a really important step. And so it seems simple to us. It was like, okay, just tell clients that they have to finish their selections before we start construction, but it just didn't work. And so we were trying to figure out how to do this. So I'm always reading books and listening to podcasts, and we finally stumbled upon one of these construction business coaches, called Construction Leading Edge, and so we started working with them. We went through their boot camp program, and then we've been in their their follow up implementation CEO Alliance program, and with a group of builders. And just essentially, they have a program called Systematize Your Construction Business. So it's essentially doing exactly that. So their main focus is on that pre-construction, which is exactly what we were looking for. But then you can apply those same principles to everything. So I'm working with Mary Beth from your team to really systematize our lead and sales process. And obviously some of that stuff is kind of built in when you build out the CRM and Zoho and tie it into Calendly, and everything's kind of automated with draft emails and things. But now I'm really kind of updating all that with updated paperwork and more introductory packages at the start. So it's simple one pagers that look professional. That'll be part of those confirmation emails. And then once we get further in the process of after the on-site meeting and after the budget review call, then we will have stuff sent out with detailed pre-construction process and selections process documents. So all that stuff, first of all, makes it makes my time much more efficient because I don't have to work on that anymore. And then the more systematized it gets, the easier it is to hand off to someone else as well. So it's all part of us scaling our business and creating a scalable business. And there's only so many hours in the day, so you really have to prioritize your time. And working with you guys and creating these pre-construction systems has been a huge part of that.
That's awesome to hear because I have a builder in California and their system is very much the same. Everything needs to be finalized before they have the whole pre-con process. And the conversation I've been having with him a lot is his quotes look higher, but it's because they're so accurate. It
Right.
is down to a T perfect. And I think what you're doing is really systemizing it so that through that process of trying to sell to that client, you're showing them the value so that when they see that price that might be a little bit higher, they understand the value of it. And you
Exactly.
actually have an ebook on this. So in the case study, I will kind of include a link out there for people to see this.
Yeah.
How do you sell I know you've got the whole system and you're realigning your sales process, but at a high level, how do you one line say that to a client? How do you communicate that value up front when you're talking to them?
Oh, good question. I mean, I think, I really point to the process that we're selling, and and obviously showing our experience as well. But on the video calls that I'm doing at the start, I'm showing them our JobTread, our project management software. I'm showing them what our systems look like. I'm showing them what they get with investing in pre-construction, which is not a big investment, and you're really investing in planning the project the right way. Maybe that's my one liner there, because that nominal cost is well worth planning the project the right way, and there's no commitment to sign a construction contract at the end of that. So I give what I think is a pretty accurate preliminary budget estimate, and then we update that, which is a lot of work from our pre-construction manager and our project manager to get a detailed cost estimate at the end of pre-construction based on selections and based on talking to all the subcontractors. And we find that, historically, we've been able to limit cost budget overruns and unforeseen issues, change orders, to under 2% of what our contract is. Whereas
Wow.
what I've heard in the industry averages of budget overruns is something like 30%, because people are doing this preliminary budget estimate with tons of allowances and assumptions, and there's just no way to be accurate. So you have to go through that process to get there. And I think a lot of people see that value. So and part of what we do is we have to get in front of the right people, or get in front of enough people that you have enough of the right people, and that's where you guys come into.
The live walkthrough idea, I feel is so powerful because anyone can make a slide deck till Sunday, and it kind of feels like you're bearing the truth. Like you can just pull up your screen and be like, this is exactly what you're getting. Here's live proof of what I've done before. Like that is the best pitch in the world. It's how we do all of our pitches. Like, I don't own a slide deck. We like just pull up data and we're like, here's an
Yeah,
example of what we've done. And people always leave the conversations and they're like, thanks for just showing me. Like
yeah.
other companies, you're like, I have to get on 14 calls. It's
Exactly.
like
Just show them
transparency.
up front. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, so I show them what the portal looks like from their client view and then how we use it for our schedule. And it's great. And then I've also created like Loom videos that I use as part of the sales process now too. So I kind of go over similar things when I'm on the in-person calls, but that way, I know I'm not going to forget anything because it'll all be covered in those videos that I made.
Very cool. I think I'm behind you in terms of systemization for my business. I'm like, I have this note that I'm like, oh, our onboarding doc, these all need to be videos because people read the instructions and they're like,
Yeah.
um, awesome. Okay. So previously, you were working, you were doing some marketing yourself, you were working with an agency or two. What made you confident that the move to like a full service marketing agency was the right move for your business at that time?
Yeah, I guess it was kind of a leap of faith. I mean, so I did read a book by I think I mentioned to this by
Yeah.
Spencer Powell from Builder Funnel, a competitor of yours, also in construction marketing. You can edit this out. And so, basically it's called the Remodeler Marketing Blueprint, and he kind of tells you like what you need to do. And it's really a sales document for him. Like he's trying to get
Yeah.
people to call him, right? Which is great. I should probably write a book. But essentially gives you the blueprint for how to DIY it, to do the marketing yourself. So I essentially just started doing it. I spent a few months doing the DIY marketing, and then eventually it was just like, this is just way too much. And I knew, we had big goals for where we wanted to grow to. And it's hard to do that without the marketing in place. And so I knew that it was something that we had to do, and talked to Tom about it. He was fully on board as well. What I didn't know was how much I didn't know. There's just so much that talking to Sienna once a month, it's just like I didn't know any of this stuff. And it's I like nerding out on these Google keyword percentages, and seeing the tracking the progress of over the months, and seeing where we are on each. I don't even remember what it's called, but like we're in the top three on each keyword search, and it's incredible how valuable that is to our business. It all seems silly, but it's like it's awesome. And it's just me, and I know it's a long game, so I kind of knew that going in. And so we're at a fun place right now where we're a year and a half into putting these things in place. And we also, for the first 6 months, really changed a lot about our business and our marketing with you guys. So that made it an even longer game, obviously. So we're really getting to a point where we have a lot of traction right now, which is great.
That's awesome to hear. And it is, I've started saying in discovery calls up front, I'm like, what are your expectations for
Yeah.
timeline? Because like I can put up Google ads and you might start getting leads in the door, but it's going to take a while to refine. I don't know if they're going to be the type of lead you want. You're going to have opinions. Maybe you don't have a big budget. Like, and then the other thing is there's so much riding on the business owner. I think that's like the number one thing I find is you could have the best marketing agency in the world. If you don't have a product to sell and you can't sell that product and you can't execute on it, it doesn't matter how many leads we get, you're not going to grow. So it really is like a true partnership, and it's been awesome to see your growth as a business.
Yeah, yeah, I do feel like the sales and marketing kind of have to go hand in hand, which is hard because you have to figure out the sales piece of it. So read lots of books on that too, and I think we're figuring it out. So it's great.
Um, Speaking of business growth, would you be comfortable telling me kind of where you were at previously and then where your business is at now in terms of revenue growth?
Yeah, so we had been growing revenue since we were pretty small. So what is it, 2025? So 2023 we did, I think, about 1 million, and then 2020 last year we did about 1.5 million. So that was, percentage wise, a pretty good growth for us. But usually as you're getting larger, it's harder to grow. And this year we actually did, I think, or we're going to do 2.8 million. So almost a 100% increase, which is a big part of that is adding this marketing and getting that traction. And a lot of what the marketing has done is given us a backlog that we're currently at right now. So we're expecting between 5 and 7 million for next year. I would love to do
Wow.
7 million. I think more realistically with project slippage and things, we might end up closer to five. But even if we hit just 5 million, that will be almost another 100% increase. which is just incredible for us and an exciting time for us right now.
That's huge. And to say that you started your business in 2020 during COVID,
Yeah,
and then this last year, I mean, you've dealt with a lot of shake in the industry. Consumer sentiment has been a little bit everywhere with tariffs. Like, people are scared. Should I buy? Should I not? To grow that much during when you started in this period is huge. It says a lot about you as a business and the product you're offering.
thank you.
Um, yeah. And then, I think it sounds like there's one valuable project that you've closed from our marketing. Would you be comfortable sharing what that project is?
Yeah, well, so the definitely, our biggest project to date was the one that we, just started recently, this custom home. So this is a project that it was from essentially from our SEO. Someone, found us and he was having trouble, like he had a builder and basically the project stalled out during site work. So very early on before like the septic was even done. And so he found us and he was really shaken, like, like he had a lot of problems with his builder and just like was really paranoid. And so, seeing our website and then having calling and someone actually answers the phone and then just dealing with me and Tom and working through kind of the sales process, like figuring out how this transition would look and, where we're at. And we were just really very honest with him. We're doing a lot larger projects. We've never done a custom home before. So, we always knew this first custom home was going to be huge for us. And, to have it just come from marketing and not from a referral or something is pretty incredible, I think. And that should just make it so much easier to get the next one as well.
100%. It's amazing to hear. And Neil Patel has this statistic. I think it's like once your product is over $20,000, the amount of touch points it takes before somebody's ready to make a decision, it's like 23 touch points or something.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah.
I'm so glad it came in via the SEO, but it's more than that. It's like the experience of you answering the phone and being
Yeah.
like, look, I am here for you. It's going to the website and like looking at your portfolio and feeling confident that you produce quality work. It's seeing your reviews and being like, wow, everyone says really great things about them. And that's why marketing is that long-term game because it's not, you can't just put up ads and make it work. It's got to be everywhere. Most builders I speak to want to do is continue to get larger projects and continue to be in a position where they are building out their pipeline so that they can pick and choose projects. They can say, that project, I don't really know if we'd be the best fit for that homeowner, or the project size is a little bit smaller than we'd be willing to take. I think we're going to be too busy. What have been some of the things you've done as a business to get to that place?
Getting in front of the right people and enough people and getting more projects. I think most of that just goes to having the right marketing team in place and the right sales process. Um, in terms of like being able to have a scalable business that can grow once you get that, I think it is really important to systematize your business, either at the same time or first. Start with creating some systems and then start working on bringing in new leads because it's hard if you do it the other way. You get lots of leads in, and there's not enough time to figure out how to handle it and follow up with everyone and in the right time, the right amount of time. And then it's easier to sell the process when you have a better process too. Um, so we actually did turn down a project a few months ago because we thought that it wasn't going to be a good fit for us. At the time, it was going to be the largest project we had ever done. And I think it was going to be a $700,000 project, something like that. And now I don't think I mentioned, but the custom home build is like a $1.3 million project, so that's a big one for us. And because we had this backlog filled out, and we're confident that in our marketing and sales and lead generation, we were able to say no. And that was a tough decision, but I think it was right for us. And one other thing that I wanted to mention is that I do think saying no to things or leads or projects at the right time is one of the most important ways to be able to grow your business. It's kind of counterintuitive. Like, obviously our sales would look higher at this point if we had taken on that job. But I think in the long term, that's going to be the right decision for us. And there's a number of different things along the way. Like, maybe it's you want to start doing commercial in addition to residential and just increase your revenue. It's like, no, stay focused, and like, so saying no to those kinds of ideas is a really important piece of the growth as well, I think.
100%. And one of the most overlooked things It's funny that you say that. I literally just got an email this morning for like a podcast interview, and the topic was controlling scope creep and saying no for marketing agencies, like the most
Mm.
valuable, the most undervalued thing you can do.
Yeah.
And I was like, right away, I responded back. I was like, man, I've got 15 examples right now of horror stories that I can send and speak about on this podcast.
Right. Well, and I think you guys are a good example of it too by specializing in, architects, engineers, and builders and contractors. Like that seems like on its surface is the wrong way to grow, right? You're eliminating so much of the market. But actually that's the opposite. That's just like the best way to grow because there's so much perceived value in specializing in, and there is actual value too, right? Like you guys know this business and everyone on your team knows this business. So it's just it makes it so much better and an easier sell for you guys too.
Well, thank you. One thing I think a lot of people struggle with is like for a full service agency, they'll come in at like our floor and then they start growing and they want us to do more in the same amount of time, which is just not how marketing works. So, can you talk to me a little bit about how you financially plan your marketing budget?
Yeah. So I just went over the annual budget before this call actually, and we were talking about this. So, I'm in a builder group with a couple builder groups with a lot of a good amount of other builders, and a lot of them, in my opinion, are just not spending enough on marketing. So, like everything that I know says that essentially, if most high growth businesses should be 5 to 10% of revenue for their total marketing spend. So that means like what we're spending on, like fees to Nova Marketing, as well as Google Ads, magazines, Facebook ads, everything else, everything that goes into marketing. And I think most builders and contractors are nowhere close to that, and they want to grow and they don't understand why it's not working. So which is good for us because that's our competition. So and so we're more in line with like 3% right now. So I want to keep it at least, and that's working for us. We're able to
Yeah.
grow with the keeping in mind that we may need to increase that if we get to 7 or 10 million in the next couple of years, and we want to keep increasing our stay at a 25% year over year revenue growth rate. We might have to get up to 4 or 5% or potentially higher. So it's a balancing act. You want to not go too high with that, but I definitely don't want to go below 3%, and that's kind of how we think about it. And then you have to guess what project what your revenue is going to be, which is not easy to do either. So that's kind of the way that we think about the budget.
And as you grow, it starts diversifying where you need to invest to as well. There's a whole bunch of different channels. You're buying swag, you're doing all these other things that are marketing, even though they might not feel like marketing.
Yeah.
Okay, Ryan, thank you so much.
It's really been amazing working with the whole team. We kind of have Sienna is our like dedicated rep, and she's just like fantastic to deal with, so responsive and so knowledgeable, and it's just nice to have that built-in monthly call where I try to batch my questions and requests until then. Sometimes I can't wait, and I just like blast emails to her, but just great to have that, and then also just nice to have a supporting team around her with as we're developing our sales system on Zoho, I can always just shoot an email to Mary Beth and see if she's available for a call the next day. And she just, is so smart with the Zapier integrations and, all of the templates and things that we want to build out. And I always tell her like, okay, well, tell me 3 or 4 times and I'll finally get it, hopefully. But it's just like the whole team across the board has been great to work with.